and welcome to Creative Leap, powered by PechaKucha. Good evening, I am Ian Fenwick, your MC and past chair of the Chilliwack Creative Commission, the organization that is bringing you this, our 11th annual PechaKucha event. We are live in Studio C in Midtown Chilliwack, in person, and streamed online. The Creative Commission actively works to support film, TV, commercial production, plus all manner of interactive, digital, and creative activity. Through this work, the Commission aims to help develop economic opportunities in the growing creative industry sector while enriching the life in Chilliwack. The Commission acknowledges with gratitude that our creative work takes place on the unceded traditional territory of the Stalo Nation. I ask Commission member Sandra Bonner-Peterson to offer her First Nations welcome to PechaKucha 2026. Sandra, please.
Aiswale, Ethlot Quilmuk Tilsqui Talisal Quachiactal. Good day, my traditional name is Ethlot, my given name is Sandra Bonner-Peterson. I am a leader for my community at Chiacton First Nation, and I would like to welcome everybody to the Stalo territory. I raise my hands up in welcome.
The Commission is this smiling group of passionate creative leaders. Drawn from a cross-section of the community, these individuals work to develop connections among local creatives, helping to establish a fertile environment for creative work in Chilliwack. They are assisted by 3 very capable staff members pictured on the right side of the slide. While all members of the Commission have contributed to organizing this PechaKucha, key to this event are Tim McAlpine, who's juggling audio, video, streaming, and recording of his production in his own studio here, and Matt Hawkins, who is taking pictures and helping in the green room. And Nettie Tam, CEPCO Manager of Economic Development, has been coordinating the entire event. The Creative Commission is a committee of the Chilliwack Economic Partners Corporation, or CEPCO, the economic development arm of the city of Chilliwack. Thanks to both CEPCO, and I see Brian's here this evening, and Mayor Ken Popov and City Council for their support for the ongoing work of the Commission. Councillor Jason Lum, the city's representative and now chair of the Chilliwack Creative Commission, had planned to be here to say a few words, but he's currently in the air between Toronto and Vancouver as we speak. He tried to send a video, but the broadband wasn't wide enough for it to be transmitted, so he sends his best wishes on behalf of Mayor and Council to you all here. We would appreciate you, members of our audience, to connect with your friends online about this event. Please use Creative Chilliwack as the hashtag, and please feel free to take pictures and post either during or after the event. The programs this evening will be continuous for about 80 minutes without an intermission. A word to the presenters. Remember, you will have a 5-second countdown on the confidence monitor, after which your presentation begins. Now, we are ready to begin. Our first presenter is Clay Helkenberg, a lifelong resident of Chilliwack and better known online as Aquatic Monkey. Clayton's passion lies beneath the surface. An avid diver, he spends countless hours exploring our local BC waterways. From returning lost valuables and cleaning up trash in Cultus Lake to swimming with salmon in the Chilliwack River, every dive tells a story. Sometimes it's a story of what's been lost. Other times it's a reminder of what shouldn't have been there in the first place. Through his videos on cleaning trash from our local waterway, Clayton aims to inspire people to think twice about how they treat our beautiful backyard for future generations to come. Clayton, please.
So when growing up, my family had a cabin on Harrison Lake, and I was always around the water. My first boat ride was when I was only 3 weeks old, and ever since then, I've been drawn to the water. For most of my life, that meant the surface of the water, though, through boating and fishing for the most part. Years later, when YouTube came around, I started watching videos of people diving all over the world, and not just diving with turtles in Hawaii, but I was watching videos of guys in states that were diving in weird places and finding all sorts of treasures. But the average person and I might have different definitions of what the word treasure is, as many just see trash. In 2020, when COVID was going around and the whole world was unsure of what you could and couldn't do, I really wanted to find something that was socially acceptable for me to do at the time. And I went from having 2 jobs to no jobs, so there's a bit of a budget issue. And I figured, well, all these other people are diving around the world, finding cool stuff. Why can't I just do that here? And as it turns out, I could. With almost no budget, I ended up buying some used gear on Craigslist and Marketplace, and I bought some of the cheapest gear you could buy, stuff that I look back on and laugh about now. A part of this was a cheap knockoff GoPro that was pretty bad, so then I just jumped in, started swimming around, looking for treasures. At the beginning, I'd mean go to Cultus Lake and the Chilliwack River to find what others had lost. I was finding phones and wallets and the odd piece of jewelry, but what really shocked me was the amount of trash in the water beside the treasures. And that didn't really sit right with me, so I started picking up trash too. And very slowly, I started posting videos and photos online of the stuff I was finding, and it really started to take off. Friends of mine liked what I was doing and would join in. I started to meet like-minded people that are now great friends of mine too. About a year in, I found a GoPro 7, and I couldn't find the owner, so I started to use it. With this, my videos started to get a lot better, and getting a fair bit more traction. My first big sponsor was a company called Diving Sports, and the owner loved what I was doing and gave me a full set of proper diving gear. This meant I could start diving year-round and not freeze. You might know Lindenman Lake, and even in the summer, it's cold. Now try going for a swim when the lake is covered in ice. This kind of gear made that possible. You may be wondering, don't you use scuba gear to do this? Well, my first few years doing this, I was only snorkeling and freediving, which meant holding my breath. No tank of air, just me and the water. Which meant, to answer my most common question, I can hold my breath for over 3 minutes, and the deepest I've ever dove on a breath hold is 85 feet. At this time, some of my videos were getting pretty popular, sometimes in the tens of millions of views, and people really started to take notice, to the point where I was even given a swellfish boat and ended up on a couple of news stations. For me, this was the peak. I was being given amazing free stuff just to do something I love. With the growing views, I really wanted to make one point clear though. Throwing trash in our waterways isn't okay, and it might sound like common sense, but apparently not to everyone. My goal became about education, using my trash removal videos just to show people what is really below the surface. Hopefully, just to make people think about how they can dispose of their trash responsibly, because sometimes I was literally pulling out metric tons of trash. I also started to get a lot of people reaching out, asking me if I could find their lost items. And on the surface, this seems pretty easy, right? They had dropped an item, and I just had to go down and pick it up. Well, that's the problem. Well, literally on the surface, it looks easy. But it's amazing how many people don't know exactly where they dropped their lost item, because often they're out in open water on like a kayak. And my favorite quote that I ever got was someone that said, "It's next to the dock by the big water." When trying to explain to people how hard something like that is to find with a description like that, I say, okay, imagine it's dark, so you need a flashlight. The area is the size of a football field, you're holding your breath, and the item may or may not be buried in silt or covered in seaweed. As you can imagine, good luck finding that. But there's more to the underwater world, though, than just picking up stuff. A passion of mine, as you can see from the first slide, is fishing. So why not just combine the two? And trust me, if you think using a fishing rod is exciting, you really have to give spearfishing a go. It's all the excitement of catching a fish, but none of the waiting of the fish to come to you. You go to the fish. I've had so many amazing experiences on this journey and learned so many things about wildlife in our area. For example, do you know that along our coast we have a crab called the Puget Sound king crab? And that fish can weigh up to 10 pounds. Harvesting things like this is sustainable too, as it's one of the few fisheries with no commercial openings, and the only way to get it is to dive in and get one for yourself. But it's not always about harvesting. Some of my videos have been showcasing the underwater shots that most people have never seen. Each year, I look forward to the Veta River Salmon Run, and not to fish it, but to experience their life cycle firsthand underwater. Holding onto the rock at the bottom and watching the salmon swim by is really like nothing else. So I hope to share some of these images and videos, and so hopefully it really punches home why we need to protect our waterways. These bits of plastic and other debris that enter our world can have devastating impacts on the marine life, from the smallest krill to the biggest whale. And as you can tell, I'm a bit passionate about diving, and I did end up learning to scuba dive. And I often get asked, which one's better? And there's really no good answer to that. Freediving and scuba diving both have their own pros and cons, but for me, freediving will always have my heart, just being at one with nature with all that extra gear. Some people meditate, some do yoga, or some even read a book to relax. Well, for me, sometimes I like to dive beneath a raging waterfall on a single breath hold, and honestly, when I'm 50 feet underwater, knowing that if I don't make it back to the surface, I'm done for, the last thing on my mind is that report at work due next week. When I think back to my very first video I posted, my creative leap wasn't about posting or trying to go viral overnight. It was having a small idea and posting without certainty, improving on each video, and having fun with it as I went. Having this as a fun hobby and not turning it into a full-time job that stresses me out is definitely key for me. All it took was one decision to press record and share that underwater world with the world. I wouldn't trade this experience for anything. I've made lifelong friends, and I've had amazing adventures. These will last with me forever, and when I walk by my treasure shelf at home, I don't see random items. For me, I see the memories that bring me back to the day and the stories around how I got it. For me, that's what really makes them treasures. And if you want to watch some of my videos rather than just some of these pictures, go check out my YouTube page, Aquatic Monkey. I just posted a new video this evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Clayton. And was the video about the phone you pulled out of Mill Lake today? Yeah, that was his latest one. It was, yeah, of course. Yes, was it? Yeah, okay. One talk in, and you may be wondering about the history of this interesting presentation style. Let me briefly explain. We have invited a number of speakers, 8 actually, representing a broad range of interest, to each present 20 images showcasing their creative work or how they harness creativity in the work they do. Each of these images plays for 20 seconds, in which time the presenters speak about the image, then automatically the image advances. This means each presentation is 20 by 20 seconds, or 6 minutes exactly and 40 seconds in length. If you aren't interested in one presentation, just you wait, another one will be along soon. This elegant and challenging for presenters format was devised to streamline overly talky slide presentations to show more and talk less. PechaKucha events are hugely popular worldwide, regularly happening in more than 1,000 cities. PechaKucha translates from Japanese as the sound of conversation. For those attending in person this year, you have the opportunity to interact with the speakers in the lobby after the presentations, all the while enjoying the refreshments provided. Networking, discussion, and social enjoyment are all part of the PechaKucha experience. Our next presenter is Rhiannon Gascoigne. Rhiannon is primarily a mother of 6 children ages 7 to 18. She homeschooled for 10 years before she became a theater teacher in the Chilliwack School District. Her love of theater began with an early introduction to Shakespeare at the age of 9 and through Bard on the Beach's Young Shakespeareans program. She teaches in the Stormlight Theater at Chilliwack Secondary, where her theater company and other drama classes have already put on 4 shows this year. When she's not bashing around the theater, she is at home with her husband of 20-plus years, her 5 school-age kids, her poodle, 3 guinea pigs, 2 birds, and a beta called Bob. Rhiannon, please.
Okay, just give me a sec. Okay, all right. Go. Where's that? Sorry, my voice is a little sore, so I'll do the best that I can here. There's my pal Shakespeare. I picked him to open this talk because I think we're in a kind of renaissance right now, technologically speaking at least. We're experiencing one giant creative leap, and it's changing everything about our human experience, including the arts. It's amazing and sometimes scary, but one thing I notice, especially in the classroom, is that all this technology has us oriented towards things like laptops and phones and apps instead of towards people. We've made a lot of creative leaps recently, but when we gain something with technology, we often also lose something else. When I walk through the halls of my school, I can't go anywhere without seeing kids and adults staring at their phones. And I think what we are losing is engagement with people in the real world. But I think maybe performance art can help. When I'm warming up my actors before a performance, I always ask them two very important questions. The first is, who is the most important person in this show? And they know the answer by heart, the audience. And who is the next most important, I ask. Each other, they reply. We never do a show without reciting this mantra because I believe that performance art done this way has the power to connect and inspire us in ways that no technology ever can. Theater resists the power of our technological renaissance because it cannot be copied and pasted or produced by AI. It is messy and imperfect collaborative work. There's always some measure of chaos and confusion in the theater, particularly when you work with kids, like props that go missing and actors forgetting a line and a flat that falls down. Like all handicrafts, every performance is a one-off treasure. No two performances are the same. It is ephemeral magic. And it's those real-world, chaotic, messy, ephemeral, and human moments that force us to look up from our screens and find each other in the real world. So my creative leap has been to use this ephemeral magic of theater to help my students turn their focus from their online worlds and towards serving others and connecting through food, memory, and story. So I'm going to start with food. Many of my students, and probably many of us, spend our meal times now interacting with screens and apps, not people. We are consuming, but not connecting. And those are my kids, by the way, and that was totally a contrived photo. We don't actually let them use phones at the table. So I figured our theater company could create an experience where people could connect over food. I've always wanted to do dinner theater, so in December, we did Michael Druce's Dinner at 8, Dead by 9. In this play, everything goes wrong, and nearly everyone is out for their own gain. The director, the chef, the innocent girl, murder for personal gain. The show had many challenges, but the biggest challenge was learning to be hosts for our audience in character without the teacher. Hospitality is one of the oldest ways in which we humans turn from ourselves and work for the benefit of others. So I figured if we can't be good hosts, then it matters very little whether we're good performers. And then there's memory. I have an unprecedented amount of information. We have an unprecedented amount of information at our fingertips, but with so much to learn, there's often so much to forget, particularly about our shared values and histories within diverse communities. In my theater company, several of my actors are immigrants from Ukraine who are still learning English. So in November, we produced a play I wrote about a largely forgotten part of our shared history, which is the internment of Ukrainian immigrants during the First World War by the Canadian government. The goal was to bring together the shared memories of Ukrainian and Canadian history. The play was written to honor the actors in my company, their families, and the values and identities of both our resilient and beautiful cultures. During the play, when the young Olga is overwhelmed by resentment for her imprisonment, her mother Anna reminds her that as long as she has hands and a heart to serve others, she always has a home. Finally, story. The internet, and especially maybe social media, has made it possible for nearly everyone to have a voice and a story that they can tell. So our first show this fall was planned to be a monologue night, but like much of the internet, it had the potential to be a dull series of self-involved stories, but we had a solution. One monologue stood out from the others. An offbeat character whose preference for cats turned into a rant about the coldness of the world and how people are too focused on themselves to think about nature or animals or the environment or those starving in other countries. And we decided her monologue was a metaphor for the whole play and like maybe society itself. We portrayed her as a homeless woman in the park, talking first to herself and then to the audience. The characters moved in and out of the park, talking on the phone, consumed with their own stories and lives, and the meaning of her monologue became more apparent. The final character, a girl who had lost a beloved elderly neighbor, ended by noticing the homeless lady in the park. She paused and gave her a smile, and for a moment there was hope and connection. We wanted to remind the audience that what really matters is to turn from ourselves, to notice, and to serve others. Theater is magical not because it's innovative, it's magical because it's something made by simple folk with bare hands that serve humbly and turn themselves towards others. And I'm teaching my students to make this bare hands humble art because while it may only brighten the world for a moment, like lightning leaping out of dark clouds, when that art is an act of love, it creates a whole world, and the sound of it echoes in the hearts of our audience. Thank you.
I personally appreciate that message about the theater. Thanks, Rhiannon. Our next presenter is Harry Doupe. He is originally from Fort Langley, the birthplace of British Columbia, who many years ago took his first steps into the world of stand-up comedy. In the years following, he would go on to do more than 4,000 performances, some of them prestigious, but most far from it. Though he did become the first comic to play the Air Canada Centre in Toronto 3 times. While keeping one foot in stand-up, he began to branch off into other creative territories, eventually writing about 400 hours of broadcast television and producing a similar number of live events, many of those of the fundraising nature. He returned to the Valley in 2016 and since then has lent his experience to local events and generally has tried to maintain a creative presence in his life. He's here to tell us all about his journey in comedy. Harry, please.
Thank you, Ian. It's Ian, right? Yep. All right. In late 1982, I went to Punchline's Comedy Club in Gastown to watch their amateur night, and I left wanting to try it, which I did for the first time 2 weeks later. It was December 7th, a clever choice date-wise, as I realized that no matter how badly I bombed, historically it would be greatly overshadowed. Pearl Harbor. I did okay early on, and 3 months in, I won this contest, which was nice, but more importantly, some people who saw it gave me my first professional writing gig. That's right, me winning a contest put on by 20th Century Fox led directly to me being paid $50 to write sayings for erotic fortune cookies. It's easy to be seduced by the glamour of the road. In the mid-'80s, there was a huge stand-up boom, and there were road gigs everywhere. Unfortunately, most were booked by people, often someone's nephew, who only knew one thing, making sure the next show was as far as possible from the previous one. Case in point, leave Toronto on January 31st to drive for the first show the next night in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Then from Fredericton through Truro to Sydney, Nova Scotia, Sydney through Truro to Bridgewater, Bridgewater through Truro to Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, then to Moncton, Moncton through Bridgewater to Kentville, Kentville through Truro to Amherst, Amherst through Truro to Yarmouth, Yarmouth through Truro to New Glasgow. No show in Truro. Or take the Saskatchewan run, which in our case had us driving there from a gig in Ottawa. So Ottawa to Saskatoon, Saskatoon back to Yorkton, Yorkton down to Moose Jaw, Moose Jaw up to Prince Albert down to Regina. It was exhausting, but I think it helped make me the person I am, a person who hates bookers. At its core, stand-up is a high-risk game that makes you do things like drive 1,000 miles to San Francisco to do a show, or fly yourself to Toronto to do a 10-minute set on a show where in those 10 minutes, one person's going to decide whether or not you get to work for the largest chain of comedy clubs and one-nighters in the country. Sometimes it works out. Another fun perk of the road, though, is finding out how other people would like to spell your name. So here's Harvey Doupe, Harry Dube, Henry Dube, Harry Doupe, Harry Duke, Doupe misspelled 2 other ways, Harry Poop, and one where they spelled comedy wrong. The Harry Allen Dodge one, they spelled my name closer to the other guy, Mike Williams, because his name was Dave Richards. I moved to Toronto in June of '87 and in with some friends at a place by Bathurst subway station. Only 3 stops east was Bay Street, where Yuck Yuck's main club and offices were. The first time I got off at Bay Street, I made the mental note to myself, work is east, west is home, not realizing the broader sense of how true that would be. A few years later, I took a bus to Saskatoon on an off day and met with the manager of the Broadway Theatre. And 4 months later, I promoted my first ever theatre show there with my pal Brent Butt. To break even, we needed to sell 275 seats, and 3 days before the show, we'd sold 15. We ended up selling over 400, and I knew I wanted to do more of that. Learn through doing. And after that, Brent and 2 friends wanted me to produce a big tour of Saskatchewan for them. So 6 months later, we did 23 shows throughout the province, and man, did we lose a lot of money. Learned you don't put on shows in farming communities during harvest. On the plus side, a few times since then, I've won bar bets with people who bet I couldn't name 20 places in Saskatchewan. This is Joe Baudelaire, a mentor of mine, and was a huge boost to the industry. In a short period, he got the country's first stand-up TV show, Comics, on air, started producing award shows and making them smart and funny, and headed up the winning bid to give the country a comedy network. He put me on a show, Comics, and he was the one who got me into writing for award shows. Award shows can be fun, and I ended up doing more than 40 of them. They're big and exciting, sometimes glamorous, and oftentimes pay horribly. It was like that my first 3 years of the Juno Awards. They pay so little because they think you'll still take the gig just to have it as a credit. And of course, they're right, because here I am years later still talking about when I worked on the Junos. Thing is, you never know what will lead to what. One Friday, a producer called me and asked me to donate my time to write a live, star-packed 3-hour Tsunami fundraiser on CBC that was happening in 6 days. It was a great event, and from the Tsunami gig, I got hired to help create and produce Craft Hockeyville, and samples of my Tsunami scripts got me hired to write for the Olympics. So you just never know. Writing for the Olympics is great, but it's a grind. You need total focus because it's 12 to 15-hour days for 21 days straight, and days of the week don't even matter anymore. It's just Olympic Day 10. But by that point, your brain is so scattered because you're writing 5 things for tomorrow, but it's really for 2 days from now because where the games are being held, it's tomorrow already. They say never to meet your heroes, and I say shut up. I've been fortunate through the work I've done to meet a lot of my heroes, and 90% of the time it's been great, surprisingly so in some cases. So what, are you afraid of finding another human? You know, what, you don't want to put yourself in a position to be disappointed? Thousands of people still go to every Canucks game. Stop being so stubborn, meet your heroes. I moved back to the Valley in 2016 and right away fell in with a bad crowd, sorry, that's an earlier draft, with interesting and talented people who I ended up working with at CIVL Radio, the Abbotsford Arts Council, Fraser Valley Music Awards, Mission Folk Festival, and producing things myself. Another early find was Jeff Edwards' Creative Third Thursdays, which continues to inspire. After all these years, it's weird to think of the different things I got to do, and there are some who think it adds up to more than what it was, which is, it was fun, but it never paid much. As for now, where I'm at now, if I may paraphrase Sultan to Swing, I don't mind if I don't make the scene. I got a daytime job. I'm doing all right. Which doesn't mean I don't still enjoy doing creative things. Like a few years ago, I did a thing on Instagram called Stubs, where on that day's date, I would post a ticket stub and tell a story from an event I'd gone to on that same date years before. It was mainly a writing exercise, and I did about 700 posts over 2 years. But it also gave me the chance to think about the visual aspect of it more, which I'd never really done before. It is said, with age comes wisdom, and I'm not sure if that's true. It's also possible I didn't understand the quote. In any case, I don't think I have enough wisdom just to go giving it away. But here's a piece of advice. If a photographer is shooting you for a magazine and has already taken hundreds of pictures, and they ask you to pose and smile in a way that you never would, don't do it, because 1,000%, that's the one picture they're going to use. Man, I hate that picture. At my age, which is 32, I've learned it doesn't matter if I'm not doing the things I used to do in the past. Like most things, creativity is a process and evolution, and to whatever place that has taken me, for now and upcoming, finding new ways to be creative will always be a part of that. Thank you.
That's quite a journey, Harry. Thank you. The 10th edition of the Chilliwack Independent Film Festival returns for 5 days in the fall. The Chilliwack Creative Commission is proud to have been involved since day one. And if you want to know more about the Independent Film Festival, it's cif.ca, and you can learn more. We're very proud to be supporting that event. Presenting next is Coralea Towler. Coralie lives at Cultus Lake with her husband, Bill. Her family first had a cottage there in 1977, and she has lived there full-time since 2004. She volunteers with the Chilliwack Foundation and serves as chair of the Cultus Lake Stewardship Society, which means she now spends more time in meetings than on her kayak. She would much rather be in her rooftop greenhouse, on a mountain trail, or reading under a willow tree, but protecting the lake she loves has become her passion. Coralie, please.
Thank you, Ian. Right. This is Cultus Lake. It is a very well-loved lake. Protecting it is taking creativity, persistence, and a willingness to try new things. I'm going to share some of the creative steps already underway and why now we're being asked to do more. At first glance, the lake looks clean and inviting. On most afternoons, a light breeze will carry a small sailboat across the water. I'm part of the Cultus Lake Stewardship Society, a registered charity of people dedicated to saving the lake and its watershed. Every year, every summer, there are several triathlons. During a triathlon, there can be as many as 300 swimmers in the water. But the most spectacular is the First Nations canoe races. Little kids in single kayaks up to these amazing 11-person war canoes with paddlers. It's amazing, breathtaking. On any day, there can be a surprise. A beaver slapping its tail as you go in for a late night swim, a deer looking up from its breakfast as you paddle by, someone's giant rubber duck that got away in the wind, or some swimmers going into a very cold lake. A special treat for many of us is watching the eagles. Even better, catch one of the fish that shouldn't be in the lake and toss it for an eagle. The eagles learn very quickly, and soon they wait for us to send them a fish. We host Cultus Lake Days, company picnics, school groups, and many other events. It's quiet in the winter, so in December, to mark the beginning of the Christmas season, the park lights up the trees at Main Beach. In the evening, there is quite an impressive fireworks show. By contrast, in the summer, it's very busy. Some summer Sundays, it's hard for visitors to even reach the lake. When they do, there's no parking. There's no room on the dock for a towel. Over 3 million people come to the lake every year. Sometimes there's a sign on the freeway saying, Cultus Lake is full. There are 1,200 residences around the lake and over 600 campsites. These numbers are increasing. We all drive, we all use water, we all flush. All of us unintentionally add to the pressure on the lake's ecosystem. Geese do it too. Every Canada goose and the non-Canada geese poop about 1.5 pounds every day. This pollutes the water. So each spring, volunteers find nests and addle or oil the eggs so they don't hatch. We're trying to stop people feeding the geese. And the good news is that at Cultus Lake, the goose population is holding steady. In 2022, Fraser Valley Renewables dumped up as many as 3,000 loads of garbage in the Columbia Valley, on top of the aquifer that is the drinking water for the residents. Class worked with the Columbia Valley Action Committee to get the garbage taken away. In 2021, the floods, the atmospheric river, brought mountains of debris into the lake and onto the beach at Sunnyside. This winter's atmospheric river did it again, not quite as bad. Clear cutting in our watershed is making these impacts worse. Sometimes a beautiful sunrise happens because the sky is filled with smoke. Climate change will bring more forest fires, and we are particularly vulnerable because there's only one road in and out of Cultus Lake. Again, clear cutting is making the risks of fires greater. There are 22 species of fish in the lake, and the numbers of native fish are declining rapidly. These two fish, a smallmouth bass and a pumpkin seed sunfish, are invasive. They were illegally dumped into the lake, and they compete with or even eat the native fish. There's several ways we're trying to manage the bass. Use an electric probe, stun all the fish, remove the bass, and let the others go. Another fun way, dive down where there is a bass nest and mess it up so that you hopefully destroy the eggs. If you're Aquatic monkey, who you heard from earlier, you may even look a sunfish in the eye. Another way is the Lions Club Fishing Derby, which awards prizes for catching these fish. We volunteers dissected hundreds of fish to collect scales and ear bones for analysis. Then this little native sculpin was just eaten by a bass. We won't eliminate the bass, but we might give the native fish a better chance. Scientists are warning us that with the current stressors, Cultus Lake could fail within about 40 years. This is cyanobacteria, toxic blue-green algae at Main Beach in January of 2022. A cold water bloom is rare, and it's a clear warning that the lake is in trouble. This one, often called rock snot because it's brown and sticky, covered much of the lake in May of 2023. Not as toxic as the cyanobacteria, but it's nasty, and it's another sign that the lake is suffering from eutrophication. It's under stress. So pollutants entering the lake, as well as dense beds of milfoil like this, are driving eutrophication. The extra phosphorus and nitrogen feed the algae. The algae consumes oxygen. As the oxygen disappears, the middle zone of water, where the fish thrive, is shrinking. We Cultus stewards are not just watching the sunset on Cultus Lake. From addling goose eggs to messing up bass nests to clearing an illegal dump, we choose to act, protect the lake and its watershed. The pressures on Cultus Lake are growing. So for the 3 million people who visit each year, and for those of us who live here, we need a bigger creative leap. We need a broader coalition to meet this challenge. If we care about this lake, this is the moment that we need to grow this effort together. Thank you.
Wonderful, Coralie. Thank you. Brooke Cote is our next presenter. She is a commercial photographer based in the Fraser Valley, working under the name Booking Brooke. She specializes in editorial and creative portraits and is currently the Chilliwack Cultural Center's first ever emerging artist in residence. Brooke, please.
I wish I could stand here and say I took a leap, that I did something bold and intentional, that I trusted myself, jumped confidently, and everything just worked out. But that's not what happened. I didn't leap. Actually, I kind of fell. For a long time, my body and intuition were trying to get my attention. Headaches, exhaustion, fainting spells, that quiet voice saying something doesn't feel right. But I did what I think a lot of us do. I ignored it and kept going anyway. On paper, I was successful. I really felt proud to say that I worked in dental. I announced it like I was building towards something respectable, something stable, the kind of job your mom would brag about at a family dinner. But inside, I felt like I was forcing myself into a shape that just didn't come naturally. I describe it now as being a piece that sort of fits the space, but belongs to an entirely different puzzle. I kept trying to squeeze myself in instead of asking myself whether I was even in the right picture at all. Eventually, my body made that decision for me. I was diagnosed with occipital neuralgia, which is a condition that causes severe nerve pain in my head, face, and neck. I hit a point where I could no longer keep pushing. I had to take a step back from work, go on medical leave, and finally focus on my health. Yes, it came with tests, needles, and doctor's visits, but it also came with the unexpected gift of time. Time to rest, meditate, and listen to my body. I realized I wasn't ready for a leap. My foundation, my connection to my body and my intuition just hadn't been built yet. So instead, I had to start building from the ground up. After the fall, I didn't feel brave or inspired. Instead, I felt lost and disconnected, like I had to slowly relearn how to trust my own body and my decisions again. The ground wasn't rock bottom, though. It was my chance to recover. Recovery didn't come with clarity right away, though. It came in the small moments, noticing what energized me, what drained me, and what just felt honest. Instead of rushing to fix everything, I started paying attention for the first time. This relationship that I built with my body became my personal compass for every decision that I made moving forward. When you change a direction, it can feel uncomfortable, especially if you've been praised for staying the course. I felt scared, not because I'd left, but because I was learning to create my own path, even if it didn't look like the one everyone else expected me to follow. There were also the practical voices in my head, reminding me of everything I'd already invested: time, money, education. But I realized that none of that was actually wasted. It taught me what didn't fit, which matters just as much. When I finally started booking Brooke photography, it was not confident. It was messy, shaky, and full of doubt. I second-guessed everything: my work, my decisions, whether I even belonged in the space at all. But it was a start, a real first step towards finding my footing again. In the beginning, I was saying yes to lifestyle and family portraits that didn't really match my voice. I edited my photos to look like what everyone else was doing: neutral, safe, and easy to accept. I thought blending in would help me succeed, but instead it actually pulled me further away from my own style. I was learning, but I was also shaping my work around expectations that weren't mine. Working that way made me question everything again. I remember thinking, what if this doesn't come naturally either? I knew I had skill, but I hadn't learned how to trust my instincts yet. My support system did not show up right away either. It formed slowly. Friends checking in, mentors offering perspectives, and people reminding me of why I started when I forgot. And some days it was just a bubble bath, a good night's sleep, and spending time with the people that inspire me. Looking back, this was my parachute taking shape. I then started making small jumps from the ground, redefining my style, choosing better aligned work, and trusting myself a little more each time. I stopped trying to fit into someone else's picture and started to create my own. The parachute didn't open instantly, but it did open. When my work finally started better aligning with who I am, things shifted. I no longer had to force myself into a shape that didn't fit. And for the first time in a long time, it felt easy to be me. My body felt calmer, my energy came back. I felt like myself again. I still get scared, though. I still get nervous before every photo shoot, every client meeting, and especially when I'm standing here on a stage. The voice saying, "But what if I'm not enough?" hasn't left yet. But fear is not failure. It is proof that I'm standing somewhere new and somewhere that matters. Your next step might not look like a big career leap. It might be starting something, ending something, or finally just admitting that you want more. Sometimes the bravest moment isn't actually the jump. It's recognizing that you're standing at an edge to begin with. You don't have to leap today, but listen to yourself. Explore all of your interests. Find your parachute. And when you're ready, create your own picture. Not the one that almost fits, but the one that actually feels like you. We always ask, what if I fail? But after everything that I went through, I ask a different question now. What if staying costs more than trying ever could? Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brooke, and those slides were all her creation, her graphic and artistic skill put into those slides. Next up is Merlin Bunt. Merlin is a fifth-generation Chilliwack native, historian, author, and retired accountant. He is also the creator of the popular Facebook page Chilliwack History Perspectives, upon which since 2014 he has posted weekly original articles on our city's rich past. He recently had his first book, Boom Times in Chilliwack, Memories from the Post-War Years, published by Harbor Publishing. On the strength of this book, he was recognized as the 2025 Chili's Award winner for top writer. Merlin has served as treasurer and board member of the Chilliwack Museum and Historical Society since 2016, and he is also a member of the Heritage Chilliwack Society. He regularly speaks to local groups about the city's past and leads heritage tours. Merlin, please come forward.
Thank you. The clock's ticking down slowly. Good evening. As you may be aware, I recently wrote a book called Boom Times in Chilliwack, and you may very well ask, how is that a creative leap? Well, being a 73-year-old retired lawn bowling accountant, it was certainly a leap for me. Until now, nobody had written a book about, or created a book about Chilliwack after the end of the war. My research sources include the online Chilliwack Progress Archives and the city's archives, but a most special source for me was my recollection of the city's boom times. Being born in the early 50s, I lived through most every story in the book, and this helped me write it. It made it easier and more fun to deal with. Let's go back for a few special stories here. The old CN train station holds special memories for many, including the thrill of waiting by the front door and finally hearing the whistle and seeing the light of an approaching train that might take you off somewhere to an adventure. As the 1980s unfolded, the Chilliwack's heritage train station was sitting empty, and then in 1984, a suspicious fire destroyed it. And today, there's nothing to indicate what once was, and very few cars head down anymore to the end of Nile Street. Back in the day, most small towns had their favorite swimming hole, and Chilliwack had Dayton's pool. It was great with the kids because it was at a location, open at all hours, the water was pretty warm, it was free, there was minimal supervision, and you almost always saw your friends there. Two factors led to Dayton Pool's demise, one being the increasingly contaminated water, and two, the passing of Tony Jefferson in 1966, who was the pool's champion. Today, the now quiet location is covered in heavy vegetation, and it's virtually unknown. Nothing symbolized downtown Chilliwack more than the Paramount Theater. Built in 1949, it provided happiness and memories to many generations. It tried to keep pace with changing times, but eventually it succumbed to old age and market forces. In 1994, the Cottonwood Cinemas 4 opened, and followed by the Galaxy Cinemas in 2010, and that was it for the Paramount. Despite passionate efforts to save it, it came down in 2013, but today the iconic name lives on in the new Paramount building built downtown on the same site. Few buildings mean more to people than Chilliwack Coliseum. Although construction started in 1948, due to funding issues, it wasn't open until 10 years later. But after its 5-year run, it became a part of everyday community life. 2003, work started on the new Prospera Center. The following year, the last event happened at the Coliseum, and it came down in 2005 to the sadness of many. It had been part of their youth with many lasting memories and a link to an earlier era in Chilliwack's history. Chilliwack Senior Secondary School opened on a snowy day back in 1950, and during its 6 decades, tens of thousands of students attended. Great memories were formed of high school, memories were formed of plus many lifelong friendships were also formed. At the turn of the 21st century, the old high school's functional life was nearing its end, and a new school was planned. The phased construction and demolition started in 2011, and in 2013, the new school opened to students for the first time. As the decade of the 50s dawned and the car culture was taking off, the Chilliwack Drive-In Theater opened. Fond memories endure of driving west on Yale Road on warm summer nights with your friends, family, or a date for a fun time at the old drive-in. Life was changing in the 1980s, and the last picture show at the drive-in took place in 1983. The following year, it was demolished, but in its time, it left a lasting mark on the community's cultural, social, and entertainment landscape. Over the years, Chilliwack had only 3 royal visits, the last occurring in 1959 when Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip spent 1 hour in the community. At 9:15 p.m., they headed off in a shiny black limousine convertible as part of a 45-minute 6-car motorcade. After their tour of the city and Fairfield Island, they returned to the train station at 10 p.m. and standing on the back deck of the royal coach, they waved to their fans as the train slowly pulled out, heading to New Westminster for the rest of the evening. When it opened in 1958, Southgate Shopping Centre was not only the first mall in Chilliwack, it was the second in all of BC. During the first 3 days, 20,000 people visited the new plaza, and concerns that it might harm downtown never materialized. 3 events changed Southgate forever. In 1974, a major fire destroyed the north wing, and then 2 months later, the new Cottonwood Mall commenced operations, and then in 1988, Southgate's long-term 30-year anchor tenant, SuperValu, closed its doors. And who can forget Chilliwack's cruising loop, driving endlessly between Dairyloo, Dog and Suds, and A&W just to see and be seen. But the city's cruising culture eventually ended. The 3 drive-ins closed in the 80s, and in 89, the new Yale Road overpass opened with the railroad. I quite enjoyed writing this book because it allowed me to relive much of my youth. The more our city grows, the more folks want to know about its history, and I believe that Boone Times will fill a big gap here. Other than usual online sources, my book can be picked up at the Owl and Cat Bookery in Garrison, the museum's gift shop, Kohl's in the mall, and the Bookman on Wellington. Plus, if you want, I brought some books tonight. If you want to buy some, I can gladly help you. Thanks very much.
Normally, we don't allow commercial promotion of personal items or for sale items, but in this case, this is such an important book for Chilliwack, and we're so glad to have Merlin here. Thank you very much. Creative Third Thursdays is a monthly gathering of creatives, and we have Jeff Edwards, who is the chair of that committee and interviews everyone, and it's a nice place where you can meet and mingle with like-minded people. And we record a YouTube episode with a featured creative for your entertainment. So every third Thursday, usually in this room, Jeff's here with a guest, and you're welcome to come. Tickets are free, and they're at creativethirdthursdays.com. Our next presenter is Hilary Connelly, entrepreneur, community builder, and founder of Homemade Community Shop and Old Soul Coffee and Vintage. Through her work, Hilary has helped shape a vibrant space for local makers, creatives, and small businesses here in Chilliwack. She'll be sharing her talk, What Happens When You Bet on Local? Hilary.
He was tall. Okay. Hello. All right. Hit it, Tim. Right. Okay, I'm a CPA, much like Merlin before me, which is probably not how most creative economy stories are supposed to begin. when people imagine artists and dreamers, they rarely picture someone whose comfort zone is spreadsheets and forecasting risk. For years, my world lived inside numbers, and what I had decided was the sensible thing to do. Everything was measurable. Everything was optimized. And on paper, everything made perfect sense, which made it even harder to admit I yearned for a different professional life altogether. So I did what any deeply rational, financially trained professional would do. I opened a retail store, in a 100-year-old house in a recession. We did it. We really went there. But Homemade was born from a desire to support the creative economy in Chilliwack and to create a space where creatives could gather. I wanted to revive something that I felt we were quietly losing, that sense of whimsy, possibility, and belonging within our growing landscape as a town. I grew up knowing a family in the valley who they baked, they built, they painted, they restored, they sewed, and they crafted. Working from kitchens, garages, workshops, and spare rooms, creativity wasn't trendy, and it was just simply a way of life. So it feels incredibly fitting that Homemade Community in its current form lives inside a 100-year-old heritage home on Princess Avenue. A home that once belonged to my great-aunt-in-law, with my family still telling stories about the life that it had long before us and our family. As I spent more time in the house and uncovered more of its history, I came to symbolize, to me, resilience and survival. And perhaps quietly, it mirrored something in me. Because the house and I, we share something. We both share deep roots in Chilliwack. My family have been settlers on Stalo land for nearly a century on all sides. My grandfathers, one a sign painter and one a teacher at Sardis Secondary. My grandmothers were both secretaries. My extended family are farmers, merchants, and builders. So this idea of creating something from nothing was always around me. So back to Homemade. And to the point of creating something out of nothing. I leveraged a shelf rental model where creators would rent space from us and then they keep 100% of their sales, a structure that allowed us to support smaller makers sustainably with a fairly low capital investment initially. We had no budget. We had very little capital and mostly grit and stubbornness and a dream that felt slightly larger than our resources. And at this point, I must mention that my husband told me that he would like a shout out. So shout out to my very talented carpenter husband, Sean. In the end, we filled our shelves and we were met with a level of support that genuinely caught me off guard. Our community didn't just support a store. They supported the makers, the vision, and the belief that something small would grow into something meaningful. So next came the vintage floor and the flex space, and with it, a new layer of community. Pop-ups and classes, gatherings and collaborations. It became less about transactions and more about experiences, which were all rooted in the shared opportunity that we had at Homemade Community Shop. Then I decided, in what can only be described as absolute insanity, to open a coffee bar to serve our collective, which is now called Old Soul Coffee, because apparently just running one business was just way too relaxing for me at this point. Just needed something more to up the ante. And somehow, beautifully, Old Soul Coffee was born. And what started as a simple coffee bar quickly became something more. A place for connection, familiar faces, and small daily rituals. Because coffee, as it turns out, has a quiet but very impactful way of building community. Through all this, I was also navigating something else entirely, and that was being a mother and a wife while becoming a now two-time business owner. This leap that was supposed to make me feel more present than before required more of me than was expected. And just as the dream was really starting to take shape, I realized something needed to change. Not because things were failing, but because growth has a really interesting way of revealing to you what is no longer sustainable or reasonable. During that reflection period, I noticed something very unexpected. What I was wrestling with personally, sustainability, resilience, belonging, were the exact same tensions that my community and so many small businesses are navigating within the current economic climate. I began to understand Homemade wasn't just a retail store or even a business model. It's a response. It's a response to the collective hunger for stability, visibility, connection, and an ultimate sense of belonging. And in building that response, I realized the entire point. Betting on your local community is not successful if it's only done for the sense of nostalgia or for sentiment, or it's driven by obedience. It's about contributing to something resilient for businesses and for communities and for the people who are trying to sustain both these things. This image you see on this slide represents our collective, the creators and the makers who are all building something together. And I'm gonna leave you with a closing thought. When you bet on local, you're not just supporting a business. You're choosing to support your neighbor. And there is an undeniable power in numbers. Thanks.
Great message, Hillary. Thank you. Our final presenter is Andy Hillhouse. Andy is the executive and artistic director of the Harrison Festival of the Arts in Harrison Hot Springs. He currently directs the Chilliwack Rock Choir and is a touring musician in the field of traditional and contemporary Celtic music. He has had a varied career in music, winning a Juno and 3 Canadian Folk Music Awards as a member of the Celtic fusion band The McDades. He's been a choral musician with Vancouver's vocal chamber ensemble, Musica Intima, and is sought after as an accompanist for prominent Canadian and Irish fiddlers and traditional musicians. He has a PhD in ethnomusicology from the University of Toronto and lives to celebrate the ways in which music creates and sustains communities. Andy?
When I look at this photo, I can hear it. I can hear the bow crossing the fiddle strings, the feet on the floorboards, the laughter of the dancers, people talking at the edges. To me, all of that is part of the music. Given that PechaKucha slides are soundless, it may seem odd to use this format to talk about music. But music is more than singing or playing an instrument. Music is more than sound. Music shapes our lives. It is culture. I made my first creative leap playing horn in this elementary school band that had 120 kids in it. And we rehearsed at 8:15 to 9 a.m. 5 days a week with a very strict teacher. It was formative for me. Music was self-esteem, pride, discipline. It was my teacher. When my grade 6 teacher taught us basic guitar chords, it wasn't long until the world of rock and roll opened up to me. The passion of rock music echoed my teen emotions, and I counted down the days between band practices with my friends. We even started to write our own songs. Music is belonging. In the early 80s, an era when music youth subcultures exploded, I connected with punk rock and post-punk at all ages gigs. I felt a bit like an outsider at school, and punk music was music that brought the outsiders together. Vancouver was an amazing place for music in those days, for those of you who might remember. The Vancouver Folk Festival was hugely influential on my musical taste, my social conscience, and my career too. At a folk festival, music is identity, community, politics. At around age 16, I joined the youth orchestra. I was obviously so into it that I was willing to be photographed with the horn in a sweater vest. But while being a music nerd may not have got me many dates, it gave me a focus and direction. I started to be quite serious about it. I studied classical music at university, but I fell in love with traditional Irish music. The jigs and reels, the diddly-diddly. I felt more comfortable in the intimate environment of the informal pub session than in the high-pressure, formal, and maybe a bit uptight sometimes, world of classical music. One thing led to another, and in my 20s, I formed a band that mixed Celtic traditional music with rock and funk. And we toured to Europe and the States and made records. We made people dance and sing. And at its best moments, there was no barrier between the audience and us. We were one. I had gotten one major lasting thing out of my university music studies, a love of choral music. One of the things I loved about choirs was the way people could access them at all levels, from amateurs to the highest level professionals. I saw how choirs became central to people's lives. Choirs are an intensely interactive experience. In fact, a group called Musica Intima that I sang with had no conductor and was egalitarian in its structure. This way of working together, for me, resonated as folk music did in its sociality and intimacy. This interest in music as culture led me to explore different world musics. My travels took me to Mexico to play mariachi, to Brazil to learn about samba, and I've even dabbled in Hindustani tabla, never mastering these styles, believe me, but approaching as a student of culture. This cultural curiosity eventually led me to the field of ethnomusicology and ultimately to graduate school. Ethnomusicology had its roots in the preservation of folk music, in transcribing and recording traditional songs and dances around the world. This is a picture of Bartók, the composer, working as an ethnomusicologist. In the late 20th century, the field focused on other questions beyond preservation, especially on the cultural context of music. The ethnomusicologist Alan Merriam in 1964 outlined 10 functions of music and culture. Here are a few. Music is emotional expression. For most of us, this is the most obvious function of music, and perhaps the most surface reason we are compelled to sing along with a sad record when we go through a breakup or lose a loved one, or why we whistle when we feel happy. Music is communication, even if it is without words. This can range from drumming traditions, in which specific rhythms have meanings, to the reveille on trumpet, telling soldiers it's time to get up in the morning, to musical humor. We can even tell a joke through music that makes us laugh. Music evokes a physical response. Dancing is the most obvious example of this, but as we know from lullabies, it can also put us to sleep. And science continues to demonstrate that music has profound effects on the brain and on health, more than we ever imagined. Music serves to integrate society. Music makes people feel part of a larger group. In some parts of the world, such as Brazil, where this picture's taken, there are national music and dance rituals, like Carnival, that are thought of as vital to the existence of the nation. And while music helps integrate ideas like nationhood, it is also incredibly powerful in transforming society and challenging the status quo. When the folk singer Pete Seeger led people in the song "We Shall Overcome," it became a motivating call of the civil rights movement in the 60s, sung by people linking arms in opposition to segregation and racism. There are several more functions of music that Alan Merriam outlines, but that would take a lot more slides, and this isn't a university lecture. Taking it back to choirs, I will end with the Chilliwack Rock Choir, which Ian sings in. Seen here performing at the Harrison Festival of the Arts last summer. Beyond sound, this choir fosters community as we raise money for Chilliwack Community Services through our concerts, and as we bring people of different beliefs and opinions together to share through music in these divided times. And it serves a multitude of personal purposes. as people who may not have sung publicly before take their own creative leaps beyond sound. Thank you. I was invited to sing a song for you guys to close the evening. So we're going to move things around just for a second. I'll get my guitar. I'm going to sing one song here, leave you with this song by the great Richard Thompson, English songwriter, and one of my favorite songwriters. And it's a song about being with someone who's maybe a bit wild for you. You know, maybe we've all had that kind of relationship, or maybe we're the wild ones, or maybe we married them and they're sitting next to us now, but... I was 19 when I came to town. They called it the summer of love. They were burning babies, burning flags, the hawks against the doves. And I took a job in a steamy down on Cauldron Street, and I fell in love with the laundry girl working next to me. She was a rare thing, fine as a bee's wing, so fine a breath of wind might blow her away. She was a lost child, and she was running wild. She said, as long as there's no price on love, I'll stay. And you wouldn't want me any other way. Brown hair zigzagged round her face, and a look of half surprise. Like a fox caught in a headlight, there was animal in her eyes. She says, oh man, oh can't you see I'm not the factory kind. If you don't take me out of here, I'll surely lose my mind. She was a rare thing, fine as a bee's wing, so fine that I might crush her where she lay. She was a lost child, and she was running wild. She said, as long as there's no price on love, I'll stay. And you wouldn't want me any other way. We busked around the market towns, we picked fruit down in Kent, and we'd go tinking lamps and pots and knives wherever we went. And I thought that we might settle down and get a few acres dug, fire burning in the hearth and babies on the rug. She says, oh man, you foolish man, it surely sounds like hell. You might be lord of half the world, you're not on me as well. She was a rare thing, fine as a bee's wing, so fine a breath of wind might blow her away. She was a lost child, and she was running wild. She said, as long as there's no price on love, I'll stay. And you wouldn't want me any other way. Down the Gower one time, the work was pretty good. She thought we shouldn't wait for the frost, and I thought maybe we should. And we were drinking more in those days, and tempers they reached a pitch, and like a fool I let her run with the rambling itch. Last I heard, she's sleeping rough down in the Derby beat, a white horse in her hip pocket and a wolfhound at her feet. And they say she even married once a man named Romany Brown, but even a gypsy caravan was too much settling down.
And they say a flower's faded now, hard weather and hard booze. Oh, but maybe that's the price you pay for the chains you refuse. She was a rare thing, fine as a bee's wing, and I miss her more than ever words can say. If I could just taste all of her wildness now, if I could hold her in my arms today, well, I wouldn't want her any other way.
Wow, what a song and what a night. Thank you, Andy. On behalf of the Creative Commission, a CEPCO committee, and President Brian Coombs, I want to thank those who made this program possible. First, I thank our speakers, Merlin, Hillary, Brooke, Harry, Rhiannon, Clay, Andy, and Coralee for sharing your stories and passions for creativity. Please. I am sure everyone in the room and online has been inspired and informed by your talks. And I believe as a result of your words and images, we all feel better about living together with you in this extraordinary community. Thank you to Nettie, Cheryl, and Michelle, and CEPCO for your unfailing behind-the-scenes coordination. And thank you to Tim McAlpine from Studio C at Cowork Chilliwack. There he is back there. And your considerable efforts in making this event possible. He's splitting the technical operations tonight in the control room with his son, Aiden. And he's been forwarding the slides for me, so I look good up here. So thank you, Aiden. And thank you all who have joined us for our 2026 Creative Leap. I think you can all agree PechaKucha is a great platform for community members to share their stories. We hope to see you again next year. And over and out. So thank you.